Good afternoon. Welcome back to another rendition of the BNH virtual event space. You are tuned into Tools for Creativity, a conversation with pro-creator Drew Geraci, sponsored by Dell and NVIDIA. Drew, welcome back. I feel like we haven't seen you in what, like a week?
Yeah, it's been about a week, Derek. It's fantastic. And you got my name right and everything. I feel so welcome. This is fantastic.
This is it. I know Drew Garcia was not available today.
Drew Garcia wasn't here today, but
wasn't
Drew Geraci showed up. That's for sure.
There we go. That's who we wanted. That's the Drew Geraci we all want and deserve. So no, it's great to have you back, Drew. Today, look, we're going to be kicking it. We're just going to have a nice conversation about workflow, about work and jobs and everything that you've done. So
work and more work.
It's all about work. It's work, but it's fun, right?
What it's about, dude. If work isn't fun, then what is it? It's just work, I guess. But
of course. And to bring it back around, you need those tools that make the work seem less like work so that Drew can just focus on having fun.
That's right.
Right?
Nice exactly. Guy? You got to have the tools to do the fun, and the fun, you need the tool. Yeah, it's everything. Everything's integrated. It's synergy. That's what we call that, right?
Exactly. Well, I want to start. Let's go way back in Drew's journey. Where did it all begin? Give us a little bit of a brief. We don't need to know, we don't need to go back to Pampers, but give us a
Pampers,
brief.
Okay. You want about high school girlfriends and then
prom,
all that stuff.
Take us back.
Guys. Let's take you guys back to a quaint little town in Loveland, Ohio, in Cincinnati. It's fantastic. I'm a photographer and cinematographer, all that blah, blah, blah stuff. But funny enough, I started off joining the Navy when I was 19, or actually 18 at the time. And it was really about like, hey, I want to go out there, do some new experiences. And I was like, maybe I'll be a photographer. So I enlisted as a photographer's mate and really got a tour all over the world. It was pretty amazing. I got stationed out on a tiny little island called Diego Garcia, which is out in the middle of the Indian Ocean. And I wish I had the equipment I had today because it's perfectly pitch black out there and perfect for astrophotography. But back in, like 2004, 2005, those cameras didn't really exist back then. You had like 5 megapixels, like the D1X or whatever from Nikon that was out there, was the hot ticket item. But so I, did a ton of different photography and videography while I was out there, and ended up really loving what I do and got out of the military back in like 2011. And that's when I started tinkering around with time lapse and HDR time lapse, and really going full sail into that, because at the time, a lot of people really weren't doing that. And I thought it was kind of like an interesting thing, because if you look at it now, time lapse is one of those things that everybody does it. It's everywhere. It's mainstream. But back in 2008, 2009, it's like, oh, this is pretty new. It's pretty groundbreaking stuff. And I really wanted to kind of, get a hold of that while the iron was hot, I guess you might say. But I really started diving into it as soon as I got out. And that's when I put a video out, and it got seen by a couple thousand people. But one of those persons was David Fincher. And being able to, sit down with him, he's like, hey, you know what? Why don't we go out to lunch, sit down, have a chat? And I'm like, yeah, sure thing, David, no problem. Let's go have a chat. And, you're sitting around this table of like 16 other people. And then there's this ultra famous director just sitting there with you. And it's like shooting the shit about what's happening. And he's like, hey, I got this project, Kevin Spacey's in it. And it's going to be a DC thing. I know it's head shake on Kevin Spacey, but
I wasn't even thinking. I'm thinking like this is just some like regular, like Drew's sitting there at McDonald's or
it's just a regular shit. Yeah, we were definitely at McDonald's. That's definitely a place that
David Fincher
loves a good Big Mac. We'll just put it that way. But we were sitting there chatting. He's like, hey, I got this, idea for a new intro to a show. And I didn't even have the title back then, but then I was like, oh, hey, here's House of Cards, Netflix. And basically one of the first streaming shows to kick off the streaming wars for content back in 2012, I think. So from there, I did the intro to House of Cards, and then started landing jobs with like NFL, Sony, Cartier, Apple, Nike. Like the list just kept going and going and going. And I mean, up until this year, you started working with Steven Spielberg and Alejandro Inarritu. He's got his movie coming out for Netflix in December, which is Bardo. Take a look at it. It's pretty cool. It's not a selfless plug right there, but it's a very visually appealing movie. I love it. So, but yeah, I mean, it's been a whirlwind of doing things that I love to do and never thinking that I would make a career out of it. And then ending up being like, oh, wow, I need how much, data to, store all of the work that I'm doing, because everything that we do in time lapse, or that I do in time lapse at least, is ultra high resolution, 8K to 10K resolution. And you need a ton of horsepower to drive that. And back when I first started doing this, even when we were doing like 6K stuff, we were using, 128 gigs of RAM, and then, like 16 core processors. And, at the time I had like a 16 terabyte hard drive. I was like, wow, this is huge. I'll never fill this up. And now I've got like 1.6 petabytes worth of server space. That's
Oh my
all for
God.
just straight content creating. So it's definitely come a long way since I started back in 2011.
That's insane.
Here we
We were
are today,
just here we are today. It's like you got all
Yeah.
these names under the belt, and but going back to that, I mean, it had to. We were just in the green room before we went live. We were talking about data storage and
Yep,
those
that's right.
worries and those
Don't worry.
sketchy backup plans that some of us have. Not going to say any names, but
Yeah, right.
but when you're first getting these calls, obviously there's that excitement. At what point do you hit the moment where you're like, oh my God, this is, pressure. I can't screw this up. I have to have backup upon backup upon backup. When do you start to worry about the gear that you have, the system, the workflow, all of that stuff?
Well, I think that's the thing that goes into it the most. So I didn't go into these projects as my first time. I had gone out there shooting time lapse and doing my perfecting the craft really for
Mhm.
years, basically. And I really had a system down. I knew what products were reliable. I knew what systems were reliable, the workflows that I had to implement. And those were like the big kickers, because if you go into a project and not knowing what your workflow is and just kind of like playing it by ear or off the cuff, sometimes it doesn't work out too well. And there's been a couple of occasions where I've literally had to gone out and like buy a new laptop because the laptop that I was using literally burned up because it couldn't process the information. And those were the fun days. But now it's really gotten down to like science. You get out there like, hey, I need this piece of gear, this piece of equipment. I know it's going to work. And honestly, I haven't really been too like terrified of working for anybody these days. I'm just like, hey, we need this produced. I'm like, hey, let's go make it happen. And
That's
I
awesome.
think that's what it comes down to. I mean, obviously, when you first start doing this, I definitely had butterflies on my stomach the first time. You're working with David Fincher and he's going through the dailies and he's like telling you like, oh, this is an amazing shot, or this looks like crap, and you're just going back and forth and back and forth. And you're just like, oh my gosh. But it's like a sobering reminder that everything that you do is obviously seen by everybody, but the more time and effort you put into it, the more seamless it looks and the more effortless it becomes, I guess. And I mean, now it's just like cool as a cucumber. Get in there, get my shots, and get out.
That's awesome. That's the confidence. And again, leaning back to the gear, a lot of it does have to, you have to, of course, set the wheels in motion, but you have
Oh,
that infrastructure where it's like
for sure.
you have to be able to rely upon it. What is your setup looking like these days? I know a lot of people, it's like we got in the habit of ditching these big, bulky, like all over the place, big, screens everywhere for these sleek, but
I wish I could
you're
show you my room because I'm literally exactly that. So I've got what I've called the command center. So I've got a 32-inch HDR monitor for grading. I've got a 32-inch 8K monitor for 8K playback and reliability. And then I've got a standard 4K 32-inch monitor. And then I've got like a Flanders Scientific to do actual like uh, color grading on. And then we've got, I don't know, I wish I could show you my office because it's kind of awesome. I love it. It's something that's it's the creme de la creme of my video experience. But it really, for what we do, it does require a lot of power. And whether you're doing mobile or you're doing it in the office, you really have to have a lot of processing power, GPU power, and the storage to go with it. And I think that's one of the reasons why I love using, Dell's Precision line, the 7920. It's a fantastic workstation. We actually utilize that for our West Side Story. We had to put together like 70 different scenes that were all 8K raw. And this is back in like 2019. So a lot of the GPUs back then really couldn't even handle 8K processing in real time. I think we were using like the NVIDIA P5000 at the time, which, yeah, it was an okay graphics card, but like the newer ones, like the A6000 are just the best and really make for real-time rendering, probably one of the easiest things. And if you get a couple of them, it just goes even faster. So that's kind of why I like using those types of systems. And I'm just testing out Dell's new Precision 7770, which is their new top of the line laptop. Actually, it's like right here. Oh,
nice product placement
yeah,
there.
nice product placement. But for a lot of the stuff that I do, I really have to have that ability to do real-time rendering on the fly to show directors, to show producers what we're doing, what we're creating, because what we're doing or what I'm doing isn't live action footage. Everything has to be compiled in a single still image, and that still image is then compiled together to create a video. And that's really what gives it the the cinematic feel that we want to do. But to do that, we actually have the horsepower to back it up to be able to play it. And that's why having these types of systems out there really is a huge benefit, especially when they're like, hey, we want to see that clip that you just shot. And you're like, well, normally it takes me about, 3 or 4 hours to render out. And now you're like, hey, here you go. Here's a real-time render of it. And it's fantastic.
Oh, that's awesome. I was gonna say
Yeah.
it's like when you're trying to show someone a video and it won't load. And of course, the one time you want to show someone
That's
something,
exactly what happens, right?
it won't load, and you're like, then you're stuck there. So it's like these are people. It's like you don't want to tell David Fincher like, come back in 3 hours. I can give you a little preview.
Yeah, exactly. You see it all the time. He's like, yeah, just come back in 20. You'll be fine. And yeah, it doesn't work out that way. But that's why you really have to have the gear that is reliable, because I've worked with plenty of other manufacturers where stuff isn't as reliable, and then you're kind of like sitting there twiddling your thumbs being like, is this ever going to work? And then it doesn't end well, I should say. But thankfully we're not there anymore, and it's all about wing bang bang. I just made
Definitely
sounds up with my voice. It's pretty cool.
it works. Where should people focus their attention? And now obviously when you're working with, you're doing Disney IMAX, you're doing Netflix stuff, you're doing big name marquee stuff. For somebody who's just starting out, what kind of setup is enough? I mean, we always get into this tech battle of like more is better. But for somebody who might be working on a budget, they haven't really achieved the level of success that you have. They can get away with less, less intense gear.
You don't want to spend tens of thousands of dollars on just
right. 50 grand, just drop it.
It's cool. No worries. I mean, there's a lot of systems out there these days that are doing a lot of the brunt of the work, and you don't necessarily need to have the latest and the greatest for that. But even with like NVIDIA's like RTX 3000 series graphics cards, whether you're on a laptop or a desktop, those things put out a tremendous amount of power, and you can easily do 4K real time, and even some instances, depending on what the codec is, 8K as well. And I think that's kind of a testament to how powerful the products are, really, because if you compare it, a $2,000 laptop to an $8,000 laptop, yeah, you can do more with that $8,000 laptop, but you're still going to be able to get the job done with that $2,000 laptop and not break the bank doing it. And Dell has some amazing products. I still use, I should say, the Precision, the 5760 and the 5770 that just came out. And or you can even go with the Dell XPS line. And those are really great just for like entry-level creators, whether you're doing photo or video. You'll come in, you'll use those products, and you'll be able to get an amazing product, see it in real time, and not worry about like breaking the bank at the same time. So it's good.
Yeah. Any experience with the 7770 line, the Precision 7770?
Yeah, so I mean, that's one of the ones I'm just testing out right now. But the 7770 is like the ultra high-end professional level, and I think what's great about it is it comes with 128 gigs of RAM. It's got the new RTX 5500 or A5500, which is a 16 gigabyte GPU card, which I've never seen before in any laptop. And you've got Gen 4 NVMe SSD, so it goes ultra fast. And then it's using the 16-core new Intel 12th generation, I believe, or 13th generation. I don't even know what generation we're on for Intel, but it goes really fast at about 5 gigahertz. But what I love about it is that the screen is a 4K 120p hertz, or 120 hertz. So you get to see, if you're into gaming, it's an amazing laptop for gaming. But if you're into doing video, it's really great because it gives you that nice fluid motion when you're editing, and it's really helpful on the eyes too. Because if you're staring at a screen for a long time, 60 hertz, it begins to drag and your eyes can begin to water, but it's 120 hertz, you really get that live action feeling. And it's one of the reasons why I love using the 7770 out in the field, because realistically, it's like a mobile workstation where you can do real-time editing for anything.
I remember it was always, gaming. We always looked at gaming computers as like, that was like the early iteration of if you were doing video for like, for like the average person, the average content creator was like, you went to the gaming PC because they were the only things that can handle what you needed for videos. That are you seeing a shift, or is it still gaming computers? Are you starting to see more setups geared towards not just gaming but video, or is it kind of synonymous?
I mean, I think they're synonymous because let's just break this down. The biggest difference between like the professional line and the mid-tier gaming line is really just the type of memory, whether it's ECC or non-ECC memory. You get more reliability out of the larger end Precision line versus the lower end XPS line, because it's just using non-ECC memory for it. but that's pretty much the only difference. I mean, the processors are nearly identical, with the speed, the performance, but it's really just that reliability that you get with the precision line. So
Mm.
I think that's really the only key difference. To me, I think a lot of people are in that realm where they do a lot of video and creating work and also want a game on the side. And I'm definitely in that realm because I enjoy playing games. And I think it's nice to be able to just like break out your laptop and be like, oh, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and play a game of Call of Duty or whatever's on at the time and, enjoy myself.
You can do it all. And it's funny, Drew. One of the things I love is that you can actually talk the tech side of things. I'm sure we both know a ton of creators where it's like, just put something in my hand, I can create
Right.
with it. But I don't know. It's like you're out here, it's like climbing, you're like the free soloing, you're the free soloist of tech and cinema and all this. It's like
Gosh.
no ropes, no hooks. It's like you can come out here untethered, you can talk about the specs, which I think is so great. And it's so rare, I think, for creators now to be able to know the
Sure.
specs, talk the specs. So
Yeah. Well, I
how
think
do
there's power in knowing the specs, especially when you're talking about like NVMe drives and speed. A lot of people are like, "Oh, my system's so slow." Well, it's because you're using a USB 3, external drive that's only transferring at 120 megabytes per second when the data stream is really more like 330 to 500 megabytes per second, which now we're getting really nerdy. But
there we go.
the problem is people, you really do have to have some level of knowledge coming into this to really make educated decisions when it comes to purchasing your computer. And not a lot of people have that education yet. But what I like to do too is also on my YouTube channel is help educate those people so they know what to get. They know how to, what specs they should be looking for with whatever they're trying to do, and not be afraid about it either.
Well, and I can imagine that when Dell comes to you with gear, they know that Drew is going to tell us it's not just somebody who says, "Oh yeah, everything new is great. As long as you put it in my hands, it's great." I think there's a lot of people out there
Yeah,
that
Dell probably loves and hates me because I'm like, oh, this is amazing, but maybe you should try doing this and this because it could increase performance by X amount or whatever, and blah, blah, blah. And they listen, and it's a great. And I've seen, stuff that I've say come to fruition and be like, oh, hey, it's now implemented in the next version of the laptop, and it looks fantastic and operates exactly as it should. So I got to give Dell kudos for that because they really do make really quality products. And I've used them for the last 5 years or so for the laptop line and absolutely love them.
That's awesome. We're going to dive a little further deeper into the tech side of things here and talking about 8K. Most of
Oh,
us
yeah.
don't. Most of us, it's like 8K is a dream. We're still focused on 4K time.
Right?
What is
We
it?
got 4K.
We got 4K. We're good. I'm over here in like 720p land.
Oh my gosh. Well, I just did a project for a new television series and we did 64K plates using the Sony Venice 2, which was pretty amazing.
Are you kidding? All right. So then, you know what? Then I'm going to skip my 8K. What is it? What is it like working with that and processing it?
Super slow. Let me just tell you, like every frame takes like a minute to render. It's
Like,
it's
how do
awful.
you? I imagine that, and it's like if you break it down to like editing photos, right? You remember going back to like before, it was everything was Creative Cloud, and when you had to actually have the
Of course.
software on your computer,
On
and it
your
was like,
computer, right? Who would have thought,
yeah,
right?
exactly. Who would have thought? What a novel idea. And you have that old slow computer you're working with, and you click something, and it takes 20, 30 seconds for everything to update.
Yep.
I'm imagining that's kind of what it's like, and you're trying to stay in your creative flow while you're just watching an icon spin on you.
Well, it's basically what it is. I mean, you have to stitch all of these frames together, and the computer's analyzing the data and putting it, in a way that you can process it and see it. But the problem is, it's like you're working in proxies that are like 1/100th what the actual resolution is. So you can see things from a distance really well, but when you zoom in, everything is just ultra pixelated, and it's really difficult to actually see what you're doing. But I think it's really neat because I think it's only going to increase, especially with everything that's happening in Hollywood with the LED screens. You've got like the Mandalorian, everything is filmed, or even the Batman. Everything is just filmed on these incredibly vast LED screens, and you have to have high quality plates to throw on those to make it look realistic. But you're also talking about ultra high resolutions, and that's going to be the future, in my belief. It's just we're going to be shooting these giant plates for everybody, so that they can just basically create virtual sets wherever they want. And the same thing goes with VR. I mean, the higher resolution you have, the better the experience, the more realistic it feels. So you throw together, a bunch of 5 or 6 array of 8K cameras. Well, there you go. You got 56K's worth of resolution that you can throw together and come up with some really interesting content. But you have to have the horsepower to drive that. And I think we're finally seeing a lot of today's technologies from all manufacturers coming together and really being able to propel that forward.
It's got to help on the back end too, with all the stuff that you're doing on the front end of things with all these else, you're having like these LED sets like you were talking about, like with the Mandalorian, all that stuff, where it's
Sure.
just
Yeah.
you're cutting out an enormous amount of post processing by getting everything right on the front end, right?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, so it's a whole new ball game. I mean, I'll categorize it with AI technology when it comes to creating images and
Mm.
whatnot. I mean, it's a whole new class of everything, and it takes a ton of horsepower to run it, but it also takes a lot of creative mind and ingenuity to come up with the different scenes, using Unreal Engine, or if you're actually going out there and filming it. And it's kind of exciting, I guess. It's kind of like the Wild West of filmmaking right now.
Totally. Now we're gonna completely segue and we're gonna get off in the woods here because
Oh, I love the woods. Let's do this.
there we go. Because
Let's stop at grandma's house on the way. It'd be great.
let's stop at grandma's house. I want to hear. I know we got some horror stories out there, and these are just the things that people you don't think about, right? Like we go back to talking about landing these big gigs and work with these
Oh my
big
God.
directors. Do you have any times that you were just out there? And I'm sure a lot of what you do is just problem solving on the fly. What's one of the biggest problems that you ever had to solve on a job on the fly?
Well, on the fly is probably not going to happen, but there's been a lot of issues where we've gotten to post production, and I think we actually were talking about it kind of earlier. This was back in my early days, by like 2013, 14. I had just bought a 32 terabyte NAS system. I did like a RAID 1 with it. I was like, this is great. I'll get one drive failure and it's fine, whatever. Well, I got 4 drive failures out of 6.
And
And we were working with PBS and the NFL for some content, and all of the content was on there. It had to be delivered in like 3 weeks, and I was just like, okay. And none of it was backed up. Everything was just strictly on there. So this kind of goes to show, like, make sure you have a backup of everything. But really, it was awesome because I was able to send those drives back. We got them in about a week. They came back totally perfect, and I was like, oh, save the day. So that was nice. But that kind of brought me to where I am today. And now I've got about 1.6 petabytes of data. And, half of that is backup data and half of that is active storage. And then the rest, we throw it all up into LTO tape. And that LTO tape is priceless because it lasts for so long and transfers pretty quickly. But you really got to make sure that you have backup for your backups because it never fails. Something happens, a disk breaks, or, sometimes you get ransomware, which that's just happened to me as well. And it's one of those things. So always make multiple copies.
yeah, it's the last thing you want to worry about is getting that dreaded.
Oh.
It's that noise everyone knows when you hear it, when it's like a drive is stalling.
Yeah. When you hear that click, it's game over.
Now let's talk a little happier there. Best project you worked on.
This
There's
is
so many.
I always get
know.
asked this question, like, best project. I mean, the best project is whatever project I'm working on, because I'm always having a good time out there.
Which one did you have? Which one was like and I know you've had a bunch of pinch me moments, but if there's one moment that you were just like, I cannot believe I'm doing this right now.
This is gonna sound weird. I've never had that moment. Like, everything feels natural.
No way. That's awesome.
I'm just like, yeah, okay, I'm supposed to be here. Let's make this happen. And it's kind of go out
so
there.
it hasn't happened yet. So that means there's still something out there.
Well, no, I mean, like, it was pretty amazing to go on set and then be like, oh, hey, Steven Spielberg wants to talk to you. And then you're sitting over there with your laptop. And, I had my Dell XPS at the time, and I handed it to him, and it has this touchscreen mode on it. And he was just going through my photos, like touching. He's like, oh, great. Yep, great. And I'm like, awesome.
That's awesome.
Here's Steven Spielberg playing on my laptop. And that was a pretty amazing moment. And then being able to get the call back from that, because funny enough, maybe we'll go back and tell that story.
Yeah.
I didn't really know I was getting involved with Steven Spielberg until I was actually on set. And I had gotten a call literally the night before saying, hey, we want you on set for this new project. Be ready to shoot, blah, 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 blah. I was like, okay, cool. I don't think about this because it does happen every now and then. I'm like, okay, we made it happen. And then I get there and it's like, oh, it's Steven Spielberg. And he's there and we're doing stuff. And what started off as just a light test, we were just kind of going in there, kind of capturing the shadows and the lights. And he's like, yeah, I just want to see how this looks. Maybe we'll use it for something. We don't know. And then after a week of shooting just different parts of the set and capturing these light or the shadows cascading across the different architecture, I gave him the product. I'm like, okay, everything looks great. And then I didn't hear back from him for about 2 or 3 months. And then I get another call and like, hey, Steven loved your work. and he wants you to come out and he wants you to do the full title credit sequence. Can you do that? And I'm like, of course, let's do that. And,
Awesome.
you know, spent the next month or so just shooting plates all day long of all these like beautiful locations in New York City and New Jersey. And it was a really memorable experience, I will say. And we had a really good crew out there. And we were, you know, one of the most difficult things when it comes to shooting shadows, you obviously need a lot of sun. And we were shooting in the middle of winter. So it kind of goes back and forth between cloudless days and ultra cloudy days. So we would shoot a couple days, be off a couple days, shoot a couple days. And we did that for a month or so. And it was a pretty interesting process.
That is pretty awesome. And I love the confidence because, you know, most people, I'd be over here and be like, oh my God, wait, no, I'm going to screw something up. No, this is too big of a job. And I love how you're just like, you know, I think it's this whole, you know, that you're meant to be there. You're in the arena with people. And obviously you backed it up. You get the call back. You've worked with, you know, on multiple projects that you deserve to be there. I think that's great. Is there anybody out there, any project that you have your eyes set on that you would love to, either person you would love to work with or something you would love to work on?
Well, I'd personally love to work with J.J. Abrams, and I just love his style. But I'd also love to work on a Star Wars movie. Like that is my ultimate end game, whatever, just working on a Star Wars movie and in any capacity, really. So if anyone's out there, wink, wink, I would love to work on a Star Wars movie. But I'm a huge fan of Star Wars, and I've always wanted to work on one of those films. But I feel like I've been blessed enough to have been, you know, work with a lot of amazing people. Like literally just got done working with Disney for their new 8K IMAX movie, and working with Bradford Young, who did Solo for A Star Wars Story. And that was really great getting to work with him. He's a fantastic DP. And it's just incredible, like where the career leads you, because every time it's a new adventure, you meet someone new and that person introduces you to someone else who's new. And then it just keeps building relationships. And that's really about the whole industry is. It's just building relationships. And I try to like tell that to a lot of folks, because everyone seems to think it's, oh, it's about the gear or it's about the, you know, the hardware that you're using. And like, it's not really always about that. It can be about that, but it's also about creating, building, and, you know, establishing relationships throughout the time.
Totally. It's like one giant game of networking, being reliable and producing great work, being easy to work with.
Right.
And then obviously, yes, the gear goes without saying. You have to have the gear to back you up, but it's kind of in the backseat to everything else. Now, how, with all this technology, how have you leveraged that in your everyday, in your business, the creative workflow? Do you find yourself pushing into being able to do new things because you have the gear to do it?
Well, absolutely. I think there's always facets of where, you know, and I'll go back to using real-time technology, because I think for a lot of what everyone wants to do is you want to be able to see your creation happening in real time, being able to edit with it, being able to manipulate it. And it really sucks, honestly, when you have slow playback or it's just not functioning properly. So with the advent of all the new GPUs that have come out, the new technologies using performance cores versus, oh my gosh, I forgot what they're called, the non-performance cores, basically, of CPUs. But all this new technology has really allowed you to do more with what you couldn't before. And I'll actually bring this back to where, you know, when I started doing time lapse back in 2008 or 9, I was rendering out each frame, and each frame probably took out about 5 minutes to produce for the HDR. So literally like a 30-second video clip could have taken maybe, you know, 2 days to render out. And now we can take that exact same amount of, you know, resolution and power, and it's done in a matter of seconds. So that's just kind of where we've come from and how we are now. And I can't wait to see what happens in another 10 years, because everything could just be instantaneously done. Quantum computing, where, you know, there is no sluggishness or non-real time. Everything just happens instantly. And I can't wait for that.
Yeah, seriously. Coming from growing up with like the 56K modem and
startup
time, it's like, now, God forbid we wait 5 seconds for something to load and we're already losing our minds.
Oh my God. You remember like downloading like MP3s from like LimeWire or something, and it would have taken like, 30 minutes to download a 5 megabyte file. You're just like, oh, I've got my songs. Great.
When you saw that person who had the T3 connection with the song you wanted.
Oh, right. The T3 connection.
T3.
Their dad with the T3. Yeah, don't worry. It's only $1,000 a month. It's cool.
I know. I want to know who are these people out there that had the T3 connection. I know. Sure. Zach didn't have one.
I always wanted one for gaming. I'll tell you what. I was like, yeah, man, if I had a T3, man, I could play World of Warcraft like a pro.
If we could go back, man, growing up with like what these kids have at their fingertips now, I mean, it's insane.
That's the thing though. Like, I wish I had the equipment and the processing power and everything what I have now 10, 20 years ago, because I would do things completely differently. But honestly, I mean, I think the whole landscape would have changed. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
Now I'm thinking about that. Like, yeah, it would have been good.
I know. It's like all the creativity of a young age. You think about how many people in our generation didn't really start being super creative because we didn't have. I mean, obviously, look, you can always say there's always that one person that's just light years ahead of the technology that just sees
Yeah,
things differently. But for a lot of us, and I think this is a recurring theme with people that I interview in the industry, they their creativity is spurred on by the fact that they have the technology. It's
right.
like, oh, I have a nice mic that makes me sound half decent. Maybe I should do a podcast. If I didn't, if I was working off of just a laptop mic,
Sure.
the idea may not pop into my head. So we have this, the technology or being able to look, I'll be the first one to say it. The one thing that dreads me, that I dread about getting into filmmaking and video
Mhm.
is sitting here waiting for files to render because I know that my computer is going to be a
Right.
casualty of video. So
Well, I think that's a problem though. Like, a lot of people don't understand. Like, they'll go out, they'll buy the latest and greatest of video equipment. They're like, oh, I just got this new 8K camera, and they come back and they try to process it, and it's just like, oh, you got to have the hardware to actually support that as well. And then you got to think of the hard drive space that's going to need to utilize all that data, and then it just starts compounding itself into like, oh my gosh, where did I get myself into? Because it really does. There's a whole workflow to these things now. Like, it's not just as simple as buying a camera and a laptop. You really have to think about the full workflow from start to finish, and then create your hardware make out from that, I guess.
mhm. Do you have a slim down travel setup, or do you do a lot of traveling with your work? And what does your travel setup look like?
For camera or for hardware, or for like
Let-
DIT stuff?
Let's go both. Let's go around the horn here.
Let's go around the yeah. Let's do it. So I mean, for a lot of the stuff that I'm doing, I'm using like the Sony Alpha 1 and the A7S III for a lot of the stuff, and then a myriad of like lenses. And I couple that with either my Precision 5760 or the new Precision 7770, which really just slips really nicely into my laptop bag. I can pull it out, but then I have that full capability of doing everything that I want to at the palm of my hands and not worrying about having to come back to my office here and render out the file, because I can do it on the go with the new laptop. But I think that's the craziest thing, because technology obviously has slimmed down, but with that slimming, there's also an increase in power and performance. So it's like this Pandora's box of like, oh my gosh, you just open it up and you're like, I can do everything. But then it then brings more complications, because it's like my laptop only has 4 terabytes of internal space. Now I got to think about bringing small NVMe RAIDs with me, or larger disk RAIDs, and then it just becomes a whole like, wait, I'm just bringing my whole workstation with me anyway. So now it's like, where do I go from here? So yeah, there's a
Yeah.
lot of things that I'm thinking about now. Like, I can't wait until they come out with like a 16 terabyte NVMe drive that I can just bring around, maybe get 2 of those with a 32, and then call it a day. So
That's the one piece of technology that always humbles us. It's like you can get all the speed, you can get all the
right.
power. It always comes down to the damn storage and where are you
Yeah,
going to
that's
put
exactly what
everything?
it is.
It's
Well,
like,
here's the thing. Like, and I've seen some stuff, but with compression coming up, I think we might be getting to a point where, these, terabyte files then now can get shrunk down into like gigabytes, if not just megabytes, but it still retains the same quality. And that way we don't have to utilize too much, disk space to do that. And then we can do more with it. But I think that's obviously a few years away from now, but we'll see what happens.
or a couple Black Mirror episodes. I
There are
think
a couple Black Mirror episodes. Exactly.
every episode I watch, I'm like, wait, why can't they do this yet? Because I've
But
thought the
it's
same
freaky if you
thing.
watch that show, because we're literally living through a few of those Black Mirror
Oh, we
episodes,
are. It's almost like
and
we're it's like
we're paralleling it,
interconnected.
honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's
I mean,
it is a little interesting.
well, that whole episode where like they're going through and they're rating people like on your like 5-star basis, but you,
Oh
depending on
my
what your
God.
star
Yeah.
level is how much you can do. And then China literally is like, you know what, we're gonna do that, and then they start doing it. And I've got a friend over there, and like, yeah, you have to be really cautious about what you do and what you say, otherwise you like lose stars and percentage points, and then you can't take the train, or you can only go to certain times of the bank. It's insane.
It
So
is. It's totally insane. It's like you
yeah,
think about it, it's like, it's currency, I guess, at that point. You're
right.
you're trading in smiles and did you
That's
hold the
right.
door for that person? Your rating's gonna go down.
It's just like
Oh
a
man.
live Yelp for everybody.
Oh my God, they're bringing it back.
The bet. Watch
Oh
out.
no. Who's your biggest inspiration? Is it, and even before this, you know what? Scrap that. I want to go back when you were
That's
first
good.
doing
Yeah, yeah.
when you were first doing time lapses. Did you always want to work in like the cinema area? Was cinematography the goal, or what were you doing at the time as far as professionally, or what were you creating your time lapses for?
Yeah. So realistically, no. I mean, I wasn't looking at it in a cinematic way. Everything that I was doing is more journalistic. So everything I was doing in the Navy was as a broadcast journalist. Went to Syracuse University for broadcast journalism. I really like telling stories. I like the idea of being able to convey a story through visuals, and video is obviously a great way to do that. But what I liked about time lapse the most is because it conveyed something that normal video couldn't, and that was a progression through time in which you see things that you normally couldn't see, whether that's like cloud movement or a plant growing or anything in that stage. Like it's just something you can't normally see with your naked eye. And to me, time lapse really allowed me to see the more cinematic side of things, because once I figured out, if you drag your shutter to create longer shutter speeds, you get that nice motion blur, which then creates a much more cinematic feel to it. And the more you get into that, I'm just like, oh, this could be a career where I could couple this with cinematography and see what happens. And that's pretty much exactly what happened. I was, trying to find what lenses and what camera sensors were the best to produce the more cinematic feel. And then once I kind of nailed that, then it's like, okay, well, now it's the post processing and getting into that, and then figuring out how to actually create that workflow. And it's kind of where we're at today. But I mean, I never really wanted to get into cinema. It wasn't necessarily a dream or an aspiration of mine. I mean, yes, obviously, like if someone said, hey, do you want to go work with Steven Spielberg or David Fincher? I'd be like, sure, why not? Let's go make it happen. But it was really just kind of through my own, I wouldn't say fault, but like just through like, I don't know. I'm just,
Kind of, you just ramped the process,
yeah,
and kind of.
yeah, I
I mean,
found it, and I was like, this is awesome. And it's like, it felt like it was a career for me. I was like, I can make a living off doing this, and then just started doing it.
that's as awesome as it is inspiring, because you don't always see the goal. The goal, or where you're currently at, may not
Sure.
have been on the vision board. And I think that's one of the things that's great about this industry as a whole is one day you could be doing whatever, and the next day somebody saw your work and they want to see more of it. And next thing you know,
Right.
you're not at McDonald's with David Fincher, and
Right.
you're sitting down with Spielberg, and you're talking about stuff that people only dream of. And it's got to happen. I mean, it had to have felt like it was overnight.
It kind of was overnight. I mean, I'm still kind of in that same space of like, oh man, I have worked with these people and I have worked on this project, and it's definitely a surreal feeling without a doubt. And there's a lot of people out there that always ask like, how do you get started? What do you do? What are the steps? I'm like, there are no steps. It's literally just go out there, be a badass, become a master of your craft and really learn it well. And then just from that, you can create something that's your own. And I think that's a lot of people don't have a lot of instinct, I should say, to go out and create projects for themselves. A lot of people want to wait and be told what kind of projects to produce. And you can't really do that in today's just like creative field. You really just have to go out there and be creative, put it out there, let the whole world see it, whether it's good or bad. I mean, you're just creating press, and you're creating that availability, I guess, to have someone say, hey, I really like your work. Why don't you come work on this project with me? And then it snowballs into something much larger.
It's like you have to already be there on your own. You have to be
Yeah,
prepared. You have to put it's kind of the whole dress for the job you want, not the job you have mantra.
that's exactly what it is. Yeah, perfectly, precise right there.
Mhm. Now let's go over to the AI side of things. And no, Scott, we're not going to show anything. So I know
Yeah,
Scott's behind the scenes waiting.
with Scott, like,
AI.
no, don't
Scott's
show
like,
the
no.
don't show the portraits.
So AI, right? I feel like we're getting sucked back into this Black Mirror world here of artificial intelligence. But what does it take to run all the AI generating software locally?
Oh, well, good question. Well, it depends on what you're doing. So locally now you can run Stable Diffusion and even parts of Midjourney, on a system, but it's all based on GPU. What's it called? RAM spec size. So really, you need to have at least 6 gigs to run it well. But I forget what it is. It's like every 2 gigabytes is a double in resolution. So with a 16 gig card, you can get up to about 2000 resolution in pixel for the rendering. And that's what it's really about, because rendering locally requires so much GPU processing, so much CPU processing that most laptops, doesn't matter what they are, aren't going to handle it. And I actually just put it on the new Precision 770, and it runs really well. And I think it's just kind of a testament to the fact that it has that 16 gigs of dedicated video space. And it works probably as good as my workstation, which has like dual RTX A6000s in it. And you're just kind of like, oh, all right, you can finally do AI, on a laptop. And I think it's kind of like one of the coolest things because, it has to pull all this imagery from different databases, whether it's in Google or any other search engine. And you're talking about billions of images, terabytes upon petabytes upon exabytes of just data. And, you normally need to have like an Amazon workstation server, cloud, if you're using it to do it properly, to mitigate all this data. But now you can do it locally on your hard drive or like on your regular computer, and it's incredible. But I think AI is definitely going to take off in a way that it's going to piss off a lot of people, but then also excite a lot of people, because it's one of those things where you can create things, even if you're not a creator or a creative person, you can create things that are absolutely extraordinary, and it gives every single person the ability to do that. And I think that's a pretty amazing tool. And I think there's also things where obviously it does take some ingenuity to, put it locally on your laptop or on your computer. But it's going to create a whole new career field, in my opinion. And it's going to create avenues for people to express themselves, but also avenues to monetize, whether that's through stock or AI imaging, like storyboarding software, anything like that. And I've also seen some things where video is going to be one of those things now where they're going to start coming out with AI video, which then can produce pretty realistic shots, but it's all fake. And you're talking about
is that like the stuff on video games that you see people taking pictures in video games, similar? Or
yeah, kind of like that, but realistically, yeah, I can't say. There's one thing, and maybe in a few months, like we can talk about this later, but there's some really cool developments about how AI actually depicts video and motion and perspective changes, which is one of the most difficult things to achieve. But just with the still imagery, we're getting to the point where the still images that are just randomly generated look absolutely lifelike. And we're probably at around like a 96% of, realism there. And once we hit that 100, that's where it's all going to kind of like click together. And I think we're going to see a whole new career field in AI.
It's exciting listening to you talking about it. You can see the excitement in your face. It's like a real life version of
There's so many possibilities with AI, though. That's the thing. Like everyone's just like, oh, you're just taking jobs away from photographers and from the creatives. I'm just like, no, you're not. You're creating a whole new playground for creatives and people who could never create before. They can now get their vision out there. They can now actually see what they want. I'll take this back to my dad. My dad loves to tell stories and he wants to create his own storybook, but he's a terrible artist. He's like, Andrew, I have no idea how to do artwork. Do I hire an artist to do this? Whatever. I'm like, no, Dad, you go in there, you buy Midjourney, you do a subscription to that, and then you just type in what you want and it gives it to you. And I think that's going to be one of those things where you're going to have ordinary people producing extraordinary pieces of work, and it's all going to be AI based, mixed in with their own creation. But it's exciting.
It's totally exciting. I think the only people who want, it's like there's always going to be people that are threatened. It's like there's going to be somebody who's threatened by the person next to them, and then you're always going to have the person who's like, you know what? Yeah, I'll share all my trade secrets and I'll tell you exactly how I do what I do, because at the day, you're not going to take food off my table. I'm still going to do what I do.
And that's the thing. I think a lot of people are afraid of that. They're like, oh, if you know my secret sauce and how my workflow is, I'm going to be out of a job, which is the farthest from the truth. Because here's the thing. I've told people how to do the most amazing, extraordinary things. I've given them a step-by-step guideline for certain things, and they just don't do anything with it. Like I would probably say 95% of the people that actually get all this awesome information do nothing with it. And that's really what it comes down to. It's just your ability, doesn't matter what it is, to go out there and produce something with it. That's what's going to make you rise to the top. You can give away your secrets, you can give away specialty stuff, but it really comes down to you, the individual, to go out there to inspire yourself to create the material you want to create.
That's totally true. Now, who inspires you? Do you inspire yourself, or is there anybody out there?
Man, that's going to sound super egotistical. Here's the thing.
We're giving you a pass here, Drew.
I don't inspire myself, but I don't like to emulate other people's work. I don't like to look at other people and be like, oh, I want to be that person, or I want to go do that. Like, I just want to be me, and I want to be able to come to a conclusion that's my own for certain things, and I want to be able to figure out certain things. So like if there's a special effect or a move or a technique that I want to learn, I'm going to go out there and learn it for myself. And I'm not going to say, oh, I'm going to, steal so-and-so's approach to it. I'm going to find my own approach to it. And if it comes out to be like his approach or their approach, then that's what it is. But there's so many phenomenal photographers out there, so many phenomenal time-lapse photographers, cinematographers, that, yeah, of course, I draw inspiration from them. But I think realistically, it's more about just the exploration of finding it in yourself to go out there and do it and then make it happen.
I love that. And look, I resonate with that completely. I think there's too much, like, you have to be inspired by external sources. And I think there's not enough people who are looking within themselves and saying, have I fully exercised my creativity, my creative vision? Have I discovered who I am as a person, as an artist? And I think once we start to do that more, it kind of opens up our own channels to, hey, I can go ahead and do this. We live in a world where you can pretty much do anything you damn well please. You just have to do
anything. Yeah, you just have to do it. But there's so many people that are like, oh, I want to be like so-and-so, and I want to copy exactly what they do, the shot for shot. And, I like their style. I'm like, but why? Do you understand how that person got to that style? And do you understand why it's being utilized? Like, it's a style. Like, it's your own choice. You should go out there and make it your own, not copy someone else's work.
Create with intent.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that intent speaks volumes for what you want to do. It's cool. Look, it's great to hit a home run every once in a while by mistake, but for the most part, and I think for longevity, you have to have that intent. You have to have that vision. You have to say, you know what, I'm going to go and I'm going to break the rules. I'm going to crash through the wall because I want to see what's on the other side.
Right.
So that being said, where are you off to next? If there's anything, obviously you can't talk about, we understand, but what's next on the trajectory for you?
So working on some project with Sony, and then also doing a couple projects for the election coming up with ABC and NBC. Do a nice little tour around the country, doing some time lapse and aerial work for that, and then got another feature that haven't heard back from yet, so we're still waiting for the green light on that. But there's a bunch of different projects coming up, and I'm really just excited to get back to creating some of my own content. I haven't created a personal project in probably 5 or 6 years, and I'm really wanting to get out there to do something for myself. I've got a couple fun ideas up here, and I think it could be pretty interesting. So that's what I'll be doing. But one of the things I always say, like, if anybody's watching, if you want to come out and just hop on the train and say, hey, what's going on? You want to check out what we're doing? I always invite people to come out with me and just to shoot and see how it's done.
That's awesome. I think we're gonna have to take you up on that one day.
Yeah.
And go out and see what's up. I mean, this is just a super easy hour.
Well, you guys got all the toys at B&H. We should go out there and have some fun.
There we go. We'll have to get a radio flyer wagon of gear and just go out and
that's an idea right there. Look at that.
Scott, make it happen. Drew, this was awesome, man. It's great to sit here and talk to creatives. It's another thing to be inspired. And I think that's what's so great about talking with you is it's inspiring. It's the whole fact that you're out here quite literally living the dream. I think we use that all the time.
Is that what it's at? Living the dream. Yeah.
It's like living the dream. You're really doing it, man. And I think that's awesome. It's kind of just you're grabbing life by the horns and taking whatever direction comes. And the fact that you haven't done a personal project in 5 or 6 years and you're sitting here with this positive disposition is great, because I know most people would have been burnt out. So how do you do it, man? How do you not get burnt out? Or do you? And how do you push through?
Lots and lots of drugs. No, I'm just kidding. No, I think
Coffee.
Really it's about that work-life balance. You just got to come in, understand, what you have to do, but then also take time for yourself to learn something new, to go, honestly, just watch different films or different, things that other people are creating and be like, that kind of inspires me. And this goes back to the inspirational thing, but it is imperative that you don't burn yourself out. So it's good to take a break, go on a vacation, go on a mini hike, go somewhere out in the world, do something that you normally wouldn't do just to break up what you normally do. And I think that's kind of what's kept me sane. My wife is amazing. We go hiking all the time. And it's really just one of those things. It's like, oh, I need a moment to get away from work. So let's go do something. So that's what it comes down to.
That cannot be understated. Having a partner that understands what you're doing, what you need to do, when you need to get away, all of that stuff.
Yep.
definitely cannot be understated at all. But
Note.
Drew, this has been great. Look, I love my job. I love chopping it up with the top creatives in the industry. There we go. A little switch up.
Hey,
We're good
a
for
little
it.
switch up there. The camera, camera battery died apparently.
There we go. Well, I think that's our cue there. But Drew,
That's our cue. Yeah.
tons of inspiration, man. It's great to hear about your workflow, the gear that you use. I can safely say on behalf of everyone that I think no matter what you guys are doing out there, the gear that Drew is working with can handle what you're handling.
It can handle it.
That's what it's all
handle.
I'm going to say it can handle it.
If the gear can handle me, it can handle anything. So let's put that out there.
There you go. It can handle my 1 to 3 streams a day, and even when my email inbox backs up.
That's right.
That's the only thing I need to worry about over here, slowing me down, is my inbox. But want to send a huge thank you, obviously, to Drew and Dell and NVIDIA for sponsoring this event. And we'll have to keep tabs on you, man. I'm really excited to see what you have going on, because I know most of us, when we say we have stuff coming down the pike, it's like, shooting a graduation in a couple months.
That's right. I've got a new senior portrait. It's great.
I know. Holiday photos.
Photos, exactly.
Sounds like you got some really exciting stuff. We're going to keep some tabs on. We'll stay in touch with Drew, and we'll bring all of you, the viewer, in on that as well. But that's all we got for now. Drew, let us know before we sign this off where we can find more of your work and follow the journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So check us out at district7.com and just do a search for District 7 on YouTube. You'll find me there. Or awesome. At Drew Geraci for Instagram.
I love it. Giggity.
Awesome. Thanks, Derek. I appreciate it, man.
No problem, Drew. Thank you. That is it. Another rendition of the VNH virtual event space is in the books. Catch y'all next time.